Hi guys! Samsung is launching their brand new SSD today, and no, it's not the new high-end PCIe Gen 4 980 Pro just yet, but a nice entry-level SATA SSD, the 870 QVO. Now it is supposed to be one of the cheaper options on the market, and there will be 1, 2, 4, and 8 terabyte versions available. Now, as you know, there aren't that many 4 terabyte options on the market, and for 8 terabytes, I think there are basically no other options except for a couple of business or RAID drives. So this alone makes this new drive very interesting actually. But it is a budget SSD, and just like with the previous 860 QVO, Samsung did have to cut a couple of corners here and there to make this drive happen. So let's check it out, see how it performs and how it compares to some other drives on the market. Let's go. This video is brought to you by Asus and their ROG Zephyrus G15, an excellent thin and light gaming laptop that offers AMD's new Ryzen 4000 series mobile CPU, up to an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2060 GPU, a 240Hz IPS display for that proper gaming experience, and over 8 hours on one battery charge. Get yours using the links in the description below. Now, most SSDs on the market, including Samsung's own 860 EVO and the 970 EVO series, are 3-bit MLC or TLC SSDs, which means they store 3 bits of data in every memory cell. Now, the 870 QVO is a 4-bit MLC or QLC SSD, which means it puts 4 bits of data in every cell. Now, putting more data in the same amount of cells has some advantages, but also some disadvantages. Now, the upside is that it's cheaper to offer a larger amount of storage and that you can fit more data in a similar space. So it basically makes it possible for Samsung to make a 4 and an 8 terabyte version in this thin 2.5-inch drive that still fits most cases and most laptops out there. But there are also downsides to this 4-bit design. Now, one is that it negatively affects performance, but I will talk about actual performance results a bit later. And the other one is that since each memory cell gets used more, they actually wear out quicker, reducing the lifespan of your drive compared to some other typical mainstream SSDs, which is kind of a bit tricky as reliability is the main thing that you want from your storage. But the thing is, the amount of data that these drives can handle before durability becomes a real concern is actually really high. So, for example, this 2 terabyte version can write 720 terabytes before you run out of warranty, and in reality, it will probably be able to write a multiple of that before it will actually show signs of wear. Now, chances are that unless you literally spam your SSD every single day, any SSD is more likely to die due to other component issues than the actual memory cells being worn out. Now, I would not recommend drives like the QVO for high-end workstations or server workloads and so on, but if you're considering to get a cheap SSD for your video game library or your video files, for example, there's no reason to worry. My personal SSDs that I use for games and random files for around 2 years now only managed to write 7 and 13 terabytes respectively, which is a long way from the hundreds of thousands of gigabytes that these should be able to write. So let's talk performance. Now, just copying some data to and from the SSD, you will see speeds above 500 megabytes per second, which is as expected, and it's actually hard to tell most drives apart as they're mostly limited by the SATA connection. Now, what is more important is how it will deal with a large amount of smaller blocks, as this is what most tasks on your computer actually do. Now, we can see the 870 QVO does a little bit better here than the 860 QVO. It shows a pretty good overall results in both reads and writes. It doesn't really look out of place next to 3-bit TLC alternatives, and in some cases, it even outperforms the more expensive 860 EVO, which is probably caused by improvements on the controller. The reason you don't see this drive perform worse in these tests is pretty much thanks to what Samsung calls Turbo Write. So Turbo Write actually uses your free disk space as cache, and there's about 6 gigabytes of fixed cache always available, but 2 terabyte versions and larger can actually offer up to around 78 gigabytes of cache, as long as you have around double that in free space on the drive itself. So if you copy more than 78 gigabytes in one go, write speeds will go down by a lot, down to around 160 megabytes per second. And if you hit the drive with a really heavy benchmark like PCMark 8, that really stresses the SSD for a long time and non-stop, you will see performance really falling behind as well. So what does that mean? As long as you keep a bit of free space on your drive and you don't do anything crazy with your SSD, this drive will operate as fast as the majority of mainstream SATA SSDs. Now, using it to store your games on, using it as a photo drive, or even as a PlayStation upgrade, it will just feel as fast as most other SATA SSDs on the market. But if you're planning to regularly write huge data sets to this drive, they're just way better options for you out there. Now, the same goes for any intense write workloads like video editing, for example, or other things that can really stress an SSD beyond its cache. Now, then you should probably just go and look into a nice, fast NVMe drive instead. Now, this is all what you would expect from an affordable SATA drive, right? But that brings me to my next question. Is it really affordable? Because this is where Samsung struggles with its QVO series. Now, prices do change from day to day, but if you look at right now, in both the US and here in the Netherlands, the 3-bit MLC Crucial MX500, for example, is actually cheaper than the previous 860 QVO. Now, Samsung does score some points by being the better looking drive, which might be useful for some PC builds that really show the actual SSD. And I would say Samsung software is definitely a bit more polished and a bit more user-friendly. But I don't think that looks and software compensate enough for the huge performance drop when you're kind of out of cash. So in my opinion, Samsung has to make sure that this 870 QVO actually becomes the cheaper option, as it will be hard for me to recommend this over the Crucial MX500 if the QVO costs more. And that's at least when it comes to the 1 and 2 terabyte versions, because what is interesting is that this drive's value goes up by the terabyte with the fact that there will be 4 and 8 terabyte options available. And as I've said at the start, there are not that many 4 terabyte options out there, and practically none if you look at 8 terabyte SSDs. So if you want to add a large SSD to your system or to your laptop, for example, you will now have a product that you can actually buy. And this alone makes these drives really interesting for people that need a ton of storage. Just do remember, they're very good when it comes to light use. Just don't forget the limitations of these drives when it comes to really intense workloads. Now that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to never miss a video. Bye guys, see you in the next one.